Hello, testing. That's good. I can hold it.
Okay, hi, good evening everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight, the closing night of Panmodern, the Mark Bloch Postal Art Network archive. I'm going to just say a couple of things by way of introduction and then we'll get going. So how this evening is going to go, we'll be in here until approximately 7 o'clock. We'll have a conversation between Sukdev and Mark and a chance for a Q&A. And then we will proceed to the galleries, where Mark will do a little bit more presenting and performing in our galleries and reading room, and then we'll have a reception. It'll be your last chance to see the show. So, bathrooms are through the door, under the exit sign behind you, and let's get going. So, my name is Nicholas Martin. I'm the curator for arts and humanities here. I oversee all the archival collections, including Mark's. So to introduce Mark and the collection, I'm just going to read a little bit from the archival finding aid for the collection, the Mark Bloch Postal Art Network Archive, MSS 170. Mark Bloch is an American artist and writer who uses visuals and text to explore ideas of long-distance communication. In 1978, he founded the Postal Art Network, PAN, and began to use international postal services to distribute and receive art and connect with artists, art groups, institutions, and cultural workers from all over the world. The bulk of this collection, which spans from 1971 to 2009, consists of mail art sent to Bloch by correspondents in all 50 American states and dozens of countries. Examples of mail art in this collection include objects, postcards, enclosures, Xerox prints, and collages, as well as serials and announcements documenting avant-garde cultural activities in various media. Additionally, this collection also includes books, personal materials that document Bloch's life, and what was deemed junk mail by Bloch. Tonight, Mark will be in conversation with Sukdev Sandhu, and I have a very, very brief introduction to Sukdev, if I can just find it on the phone here. Here we are. Sukdev Sandhu directs the Colloquium for Unpopular Culture at New York University. His books include Geologic Listening and Other Musics. Take it away. Thank you both for being here tonight.
So one thing that Nicholas didn't mention, maybe because you all know this, is that you were born on a military base. Is that right, in Germany? And I'm kind of curious about military bases as giving you a certain kind of access to communication theory, their own kind of regimes of postal politics. A different kind of information circulation develops around military bases. Did that ever, when you kind of look back on many sort of decades now of your kind of thinking and immersion and sort of development of this field, does any of that, do you think, sort of go back to your upbringing?
I love that question. I've never thought about that I've thought about being born on a military base on a in a military hospital on a U.S. military base many times, but I've never once ever thought about it in relation to my work or anything that I do. But I think that's extremely exciting because it reminds me of George Machunas, the guy who invented Fluxus. He started out in New York. He basically invented Soho. He created Soho, the Low-Houston, taking industrial buildings and getting artists to live in them and so on. That's a whole story unto himself. But he was always running from the law and running from financial pressures, and he escaped to Europe before Fluxus. Fluxus had a name. It was supposed to be a magazine, but it wasn't an art movement yet. It eventually became known as Fluxus. But when he was like running from the law, so he kind of went to Germany, went to Wiesbaden, and somehow had access there or a job. And that was where Fluxus began, and a guy named Emmett Williams, who was an American poet, also was stationed in Germany, and Ben Patterson, one of the original Fluxus artists, was on a military base, I believe. So there's a strong connection between the avant-garde, and particularly in New York and the downtown situation, and military bases. So that's why I like being lumped in there with these guys. But in general, speaking of running from the law, I think I was not born out of wedlock, but conceived out of wedlock, and my parents were running from the social mores of the time, and they beat it over to Germany, had me, and then they went back to the United States with me, and so that's why I was born in Germany. But my mom and dad, my mom's still alive, they might not agree with that, but that's how I see it.
People I know who've had that kind of upbringing, because they're often being uprooted after a couple of years, 3 years, it's hard to kind of build attachments. But some of them told me about the rest of their lives as an attempt to find a kind of continuity, to build their own kind of maybe semi-elected communities.
I know people like that, and I was not a military brat. My dad was just in the U.S. Army for like 3 years. He started out at a base in Arkansas, then they went to Germany, then he came back, and then he was no longer in the Army. So it was just a short-lived thing. But I'm not sure I was complete about the Fluxus thing, just that sort of military mail and all that. George Machunas and the early Fluxus artists definitely made use of that, and I love that idea of like these, I can't remember what they call it. It's like couriers and satchels, and it's like, like people would send things from one military base to another, and it might say, like, drop this in the mail when it gets to this particular base. So then it would like connect up with the general mail system at large, but it was sort of free transport of mail, through the sacks of mail on military bases.
Can I try another speculative origin story?
Yes, please, take your best shot.
Today's the 80th birthday of Robert Wyatt. Thank God for Robert Wyatt. Member of Soft Machine, of course, a band that takes its name from William Burroughs, who had many things to say about information, data, control. But Soft Machine and Robert Wyatt, they didn't sort of perform in this country a whole lot. They're not that well remembered over here. But they're a band, and you speak quite a lot about music, but you talk particularly eloquently about that constellation of musicians. What was it about Soft Machine that just ensnared you?
Snared me. He was a drummer, by the way, and so am I. But yeah, and it's good to note that they hardly did perform in the United States at all, but when they did, they were the opening act for the Jimi Hendrix Experience in 1968. So that's good, good street cred. But yeah, when I was a kid, I grew up in Akron, Ohio. And a friend of mine had an older brother, and he liked this band Caravan, and we used to, you know, basically smoke pot and do whatever and listen to music, and we loved the band Caravan. But I slowly started to notice more that, like, even though Caravan they're pretty out there too, but they're commercial compared to Soft Machine. I started to notice the Soft Machine was pretty out there and pretty interesting. And they talked about things like pataphysics and Dada in their album, well, in their song titles. So I just latched onto them, and then since then he's kind of become like a reference point for me. So when Sukdev started talking about Robert Wyatt, let alone it being his birthday, his 80th birthday, I didn't know that, and I'm excited and glad to find a fellow traveler. The genre is called, it's come to be known as Canterbury music, because it's from the town of Canterbury in England, you know, where the Archbishop of Canterbury and all that comes from. And yeah, it's just a town, and it turned into a certain style of music, which is slightly commercial, but mostly not, and very whimsical, and definitely influenced by Dada. And I did get to have a long conversation with Robert Wyatt one time when I asked him about all the things I was dying to know about. He was the person that first mentioned Chomsky, and he said Chomsky got it right as a song lyric, and I'm like, who is this Chomsky? And then I just found out all about Chomsky, so I was able to ask him about that. What do you mean when you say Chomsky got it right? But I also got to ask him about Marcel Duchamp and Dada and Surrealism and his father's record collection and his father's book collection, and so it was really nice to talk about avant-garde and how it related to his music.
He's not good on email, but he still insists on sending lots of postcards and augmented, sort of crafted mail. So there's that connection too.
Yes, I did get a postcard from him one time. It was barely signed. I think it took me a long time to figure out it was for him. I hate the people that don't put their name on the postcards.
You were at Kent State in the wake of the assassinations of that period. What was it like sort of studying there, and how did that place sort of soak into your thinking in the mid-70s?
Well, in retrospect, I realized that it was really important what happened to me there. I mean, it was obviously very important what happened there. But like, I used to think of myself as well, let me say it this way. First of all, the people that I was not there in 1970 when the shootings happened. The people that were there, it had a huge impact on their lives, and it has an amazing influence on the arts of our time, because like Mark Mothersbaugh and Jerry Casale, who were in the band Devo, were at Kent at that time, and they watched these kids get killed that they knew. And there's lots of other artists that were there at that time, and that totally rocked their world in a negative way, I guess you have to say. It's horrible. And also Richard Vine is a guy who used to be the editor of Art in America. He's a friend, and he was telling me about it recently. He was there, and it totally affected his life. So those people had it like right in their DNA, like from the word go. For me, I grew up in Akron, 20 miles away, so I was like 13, 14 when that happened, and I was definitely aware of it, and it was important to me, but I didn't really, you know, and I knew it was local, but it didn't particularly, like, that's not why I went to school there or anything, and I didn't think that it would. I guess the reason I mentioned Mothersbaugh and those Devo guys and the other stuff is because in retrospect, I realized there were some culturally very interesting things going on there that I was not aware of at the time, only now, as an adult, looking back, I see, oh, it was pretty advanced. I saw myself as being like a suburban bumpkin who didn't know anything, that was studying painting and drawing, thinking like, oh, there must be more to art than this. I didn't know how to, I didn't know what to do with myself. And I later found out when Joan Jonas came to teach there, and Linda Benglis also came at the same time as Joan Jonas, but I did not study with Linda Benglis. But I did have Joan Jonas for class, and she told me what was going on in New York, told me about video art, told me about performance art, the kitchen, Franklin Furnace, stuff that was happening, and that's what led me directly to this world. At the time, I just thought it was kind of like a backwards place, because I was a backwards person, not a backwards person, but like I said, a suburban bumpkin. I didn't know what to think. That's just it. I realize now that all these avant-garde streams, were trying to get to me, but I didn't recognize them because I was just raised on normal TV. I was born in 1956, which now I seem like an old person, and I'm sure young people think, ooh, 1956. You know how young people are. But where are they, by the way? Are any here? All of you. No. What I'm saying is that for me at that time, I was just raised on mainstream America, But it turned out that, like my dad owned a bar, and he had a jukebox. So he had an album by the Fugs that was given to him by an A&R guy from a record company, because he was promoting music. So my dad gave me a Fugs record. He didn't know what it was, and the Fugs are amazing. And and like I said, I liked Robert Wyatt. It just sort of trickled through from my friend's older brother. And then in my junior high library, there was Freak Out by Frank Zappa, and I listened to that with headphones on. I'm like, what the hell is this? I didn't understand any of it. I didn't know what it was about, but yeah. So
I have a memory.
yeah. Sorry, I'm going off.
No.
That was.
I have a memory of getting letters of friends or people in different towns, different countries, describing places that they'd gone to, and me wanting to be there. And these days, they can document it immediately, and they can ping something over in a WhatsApp message. But the allure and the power of what they were describing was all the more intense, I realize now, because I couldn't see it, and because I couldn't hear it, and I relied on their translations, and I relied on the slowness, even of the letter going through mail. So I think in a way, the scarcity of access, or what seems like bumpy access these days, can be quite useful. Rather, where today you're immediately sort of saturated by stuff, so it gives you sometimes a sort of sense that you know a lot about things, but it's a different kind of knowledge.
It's a kind of thin, broad knowledge, but not the depth thing. I mean, young people don't understand that back then, how did you find out about things that weren't in your face? If you didn't hear about something, you didn't find out about it. It wasn't like you could just go Google it, So it wasn't until John Lennon and Yoko Ono came along that I heard the word avant-garde, and I wanted to know what that was. Oh, Yoko Ono was an avant-garde artist. And it took me 10 years to find out what an avant-garde artist was. I looked in the dictionary, it wasn't in there, I didn't know what other dictionary to look in, nobody told me. That's what I mean about being a suburban bumpkin, I didn't know you could go look at a French dictionary or whatever. I didn't know you should go to a college and look it up, whatever. I didn't know anything. I didn't know where to begin. So the things that people knew just came to them by following their nose. And then if you did find something you liked, then you could have that depth of, drilling down, right?
You mentioned studying with Joan Jonas, and that reminded me of the writer, curator Tom McGlynn, describing mail art as postal performance art. What did you learn from working with Joan?
That's a great question, because I didn't really understand I I realize now, this is funny that you and I are doing this, because this conversation that you and I are having is more like what I thought performance art was or could be when Joan told me about performance art. I immediately went to Johnny Carson, you know, Ed Sullivan, whatever, my normal sort of mainstream ideas. But at the time, you know, and that was in 1973 or 4, so I think Joan might have even said, she never said this to me, but I always imagined that she would have said, that's not what performance art is, Mark. Of course, later, I think it became more like that for certain people. That it's gone everywhere it could possibly go, including talk shows, including mainstream entertainment, including magicians. I mean, like, I actually did a little thing where I hired a magician, I interviewed Joan, I quit smoking on a videotape. I was like, whatever, it was like a little performance, but I did a number of things on video, just again, following my nose, just doing what I thought performance art would be. And, you know, she played along, she was on the video, and, yeah, I don't know the answer, except that she told me what performance art was and what video art was, and then, you know, I took it where I wanted to take it. And then I should have mentioned that there was another guy by the name of Takahiro Imura, who was a Japanese video artist, and he also was there at that time. So, and he was loosely affiliated with Yoko Ono and John Lennon in Japan. So we had like a language barrier, so that was very tough. But I did attempt to interview him. The fact that I didn't know what an avant-garde artist was, combined with a language barrier, made it very difficult for me to get the information I was looking for, but I tried. I showed him my Super 8 video, my Super 8 films, and he said, occasionally, very occasionally, oh, that's a nice shot, you know, so we communicated in that way. But,
yeah, it's kind of growing, I mean, it's been going for quite a long time now, but a significant spike of interest in the mimeography, in the photocopier and the fanzine. In particular, there's that big show at Brooklyn Museum, was it last year? Copy Machine Manifestos. How when did you become kind of sort of interested in sort of zines? And how did Panmodern start?
It started from the very beginning. As soon as I heard about zines, I made a zine. And the reason that I have a confession to make, I don't think I've ever said this in public. I'm going to tell you guys a funny thing. You know how it's called a zine, which is part of the word magazine? I called my magazine Pan Mag because I just got it wrong. Instead of taking the second half of the word, I knew it was part of the word magazine, but I didn't take the zine part, I took the mag part. So I called it Pan Mag, but now I call it Pan Mag a zine. But anyway, I started from the very beginning. As soon as I heard about, Ken Friedman, a Fluxus artist, had written some stuff about zines, and he was really a link between like punk and zines and mail art directly, so he was a bit of an influence on me.
And what kind of, what size editions were they?
They were all different sizes of pages and formats and the number of editions, and even the numbering of the magazines was weird. I started out with, the very first one was called 391 because Picabia published a magazine called 391, and I love surrealism, so I just called it Pan Mag, and it was edition 391. And then I did a performance at a bookstore in Laguna Beach, California. I lived in California at the time. I did a performance at a bookstore, and it was called Fahrenheit 451. So the second issue was called Pan Mag 451. But then I updated that, and I called it Pan Mag 452. And then in 1980, I finally did Pan Mag issue 1. And then I did Pan Mag issue 2, but I forgot that I made another Pan Mag issue 2, so there's actually 2 Pan Mag number 2s. And then I did 3 and 4 and so on, but I have skipped some occasionally, and I would eventually like to go back and fill in all the blanks and make it very official, but I have never found myself too tied down to all that. I kind of like the, I do what the hell I want, you know? There's no rules in mail art, and people used to say, mail art and money don't mix. It's part of the unwritten rules of mail art. And I used to feel like, well, if there's unwritten rules, why are you writing them down and quoting them to me? And, you know, I realize now that if I wanted to be in an art form with rules, there were so many other options available to me. I purposely chose mail art because I didn't want to have rules, you know, so.
Can we get any of those old editions? Oh.
Yes, because I have a few left of the early editions, and those are available at an exorbitant price because mail art and money do mix. But more interestingly, I would like to do a reissue of all the Pan Mags now, and I want to make them available, and I also might want to make a book at some point, put them all together into one big fat book.
I think I heard you say that sort of mail art is not visual art. So, what's it like putting together an exhibition of mail art?
Well, I think it's visual. Did I say that?
Internet doesn't know.
I think it's visual art, and I think it's art that you can hang on the wall, but I think it's much more than that, and it's other things as well. I think it's a process, it's relational, it's social, and it's performative. So you can hang it on the wall. I used to like Ed Higgins was one of the mail artists, and he had a little rubber stamp that said, "A work of art by Ed Higgins to be framed and hung on the wall." And I always liked that. I always sort of thought of my work that way when I was sending it to people. I didn't say it to them, but I said it to myself. I'm sending you a work of art by Mark Bloch to be framed and hung on the wall.
So it's possible that not everybody here has had yet an opportunity to see the exhibition, or maybe isn't sort of familiar with the collection. Can you give us a sense of its scale and how it built up over time?
Yes. Well, the show is a result of what built up over time and was part of what NYU now owns. And the way there's 9 latrines in there, and they represent 9 categories, and those categories emerged when I went through the stuff that NYU owned and just looked at my stuff and thought, oh, this is like, this should be this, and then these like little categories began to take shape. So that's how the show came about. The way my archive came about was, well, the way all that archive and my archive and perhaps all archives of any kind, but especially of mail art, came about is that it's just what came in. I would send out what I do. I did those crazy Pan Mags with the crazy numbering schemes, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And then I started to get stuff back, and I really was like delighted. And so I would occasionally put things in certain categories, but generally it just all got put into boxes in chronological order. And Nicholas likes to talk about how my stuff is organized by country, and that's like a thing that's unique to my archive as opposed to other people's archives, because they don't organize their archives by country. I just did because for me it's how I thought of it. You know, it's like, oh, the Japanese are here, you know, and the Argentinians are here, and all the South Americans are here with the Argentinians, you know, and so it just, my archive at home is basically in cardboard boxes and bags, you know, brown paper bags. And at a certain point, I had a large portion of it that I didn't want. I mean, I wanted all, but one cannot keep everything. So I offered it to NYU, and they were kind enough to take it. And so that's how this exhibition took place, with me just looking through what they had and me deciding, oh, this is this and this is that, and I came up with 9 categories, which I'm happy to tell you all about and talk about it in there or whatever. But I think what I like about the show is that those 9 categories actually, in my opinion, I don't think they would be the same 9 categories that some other male artists might pick, but there are some male artists here today. So they have their own take on it. One of the things that's great about male art is that the viewer decides. Like that's when they say male art and money don't mix. I don't want to, be glib about that. What it means is that the viewer decides. Each person, it's not done for money, and no thing has more inherent value than any other thing. It's just up to the viewer to decide what has value for them. And so I basically collected what I collected, and when I went through the stuff, I came up with these 9 categories, and I think, oh, they're pretty interesting. Like, for me, at this time, they speak to what male art is. They gave a pretty well-rounded picture.
What is its relationship? I mean, the exhibition is partly in the context of Fail's downtown collection. What is the relationship, if there is one, between male art and downtown?
Oh, I love talking about that because who lives in New York that needs to be a male artist? Nobody. There was like people in Eastern Europe that were sending male art because it was like survival. They had like dictators. We might even have a dictator here someday. But anyway, they had dictators in like Uruguay, and they were jailed for doing mail art because it was found out. But in other words, it was like imperative for them to communicate in their avant-garde way, and they got in trouble for it. But they were doing it because that was like survival for them and their avant-garde ideas. Same in Eastern Europe. When I came in and started doing it in '77 up until '89, there was East Germany. What I love about showing young people the stuff now is like, I don't even think people understand what East Germany is. It's an amazing freaking thing that you should know about, because, yeah, well, right? I mean, sorry to get so excited, but it's just, yeah, so in East Germany and in Lithuania or in all the countries of the USSR, or any other countries you can name, maybe even, whatever, East Timor, I don't know of any male artists in East Timor, but in other words, nobody in New York needed to be a male artist for because it was essential. I'm surrounded by culture and, I got luxury problems, but I chose to be a male artist, which is kind of a freaky thing. Maybe I should have been down in Soho, like selling my wares or hustling or doing whatever people did back then. But I chose this altruistic gift economy to be part of because I just thought it was interesting, I guess.
And you have samples from all the states in this country. Is there a kind of, what would you call it, form of paperish unconscious of or a paper-channeled unconscious of a nation that emerges? You're surrounded by these packets, folders, boxes of stuff, these vulnerable scripts, these juxtapositions, these collages, these colors, these zip codes. What kind of world is ushered into being?
Well, that's one of the categories. It's called Art as a Language, and I specifically did it for that reason because I love the way different countries paper and feel, just the feel of it, not just the physical feel of the paper, but the feel of the vibe of different mail art countries is completely different from others. So Japanese have this very sort of silky paper, and then I have one in there from Cuba, which was very rare for me. I know there's a few people that have corresponded with people in Cuba then and before and after. For me, I only had a few things from Cuba, but they were like basically printed on brown paper bags, and they were amazing. So there's that, and so yeah, I think each country has its own vibe to it, and that was really enhanced by a guy by the name of Jürgen Kirchspiel in Stuttgart that I visited in 1986, and what he did was he took all the envelopes from his mail art, he kept the internal, contents. He took the envelopes and then he ground them up and made paper out of them, but he did it by country. So one country's paper was like one vibe and another country was another vibe, and he had all these different papers and they were gorgeous. They were absolutely amazing.
Saliva in the mix as well.
There's saliva, and there's also air. As I'm going to do a performance later, and part of it is going to be about the air we breathe.
We'll have an opportunity to kind of discuss some of the kind of particular both individual sort of vitrines and individual sort of examples of the collection, and it might be kind of especially tangible and kind of meaningful when we are there sort of collectively. But before we head over, does anybody have any sort of questions or for Mark, or any kind of responses to anything he said?
I would love to hear that. But can I show you slides very quickly? We didn't touch on those, and I just wanted to tell you why I brought them very briefly. Well, this one is, it says WTF, afraid of art movements, and I'm just showing a printing press and sort of, oh, it's too hard to explain what it is, but it's just, it's a printing press to sort of show where I come from in this activity. I like William Blake, so maybe there's like Ray Johnson was a guy who's in there, and he did mail art in the 50s, and the Italian Futurists did mail art in about 1905. For me, I go back, all the way back, but I love like William Blake, so to me this picture of a printing press just speaks to that idea, and it's a specific thing about a person that I was arguing with, and it's a bit of a manifesto, but anyway, that's what this image is. And then this one is 26 umbrellas, and it's dedicated to this woman named Judith Hofberg, who had a magazine called Umbrella. She's no longer with us, so it's kind of an homage to her. But it's like 26 different letters of the alphabet and different activities that male artists, or what I call post-flux artists, might do. Like under C, there's Cinderellas, which is what they call fake postage stamps, Cinderellas. But also collage, communications art, computer art, conceptual art, concrete poetry, correspondence art, cut up. So what I'm saying is that each letter of the alphabet has about 3 or 4 or 10 activities that you could say, and this is what people who are engaged in mail art today might do. And the reason I say that is because really I think that all this stuff is very derivative. Like maybe in 1970 when the Kent State shootings happened, those guys were on the edge. Mail art was in the 70s was pretty cutting edge. By the time I got into it in 77, 78, I don't know that it was that avant-garde. I don't know if there was an avant-garde, but I do feel that there's legitimate activities that people can engage in, and it's pretty wonderful. I don't think nobody should stop doing conceptual art. So anyway, I was just trying to point out that these are the activities we engage in. It might be any of them or all of them, and they may or may not be avant-garde, and they may or may not be derivative, but we do them anyway, if that makes sense. Is it okay that I'm showing you this? This is just some drawings that you'll see in the show, which are about different communication forms, a TV. I was a communication major in college, so you see, they're not in order here, but a TV, a radio, a satellite, a telegraph, smoke signals, and beating on drums, and a telephone. So I'm just a communications artist. I'm just one of the continuum. And Nam June Pike called Ray Johnson the first communications artist, which I always thought was pretty great. So I consider myself a communications artist. And I consider myself a satyr, a god of fields, forests, and flocks, nightmares, masturbation, fornication. He's an earthy god that comes from Arcadia, the Arcadian fields in Greece. No, actually what happened was Postal Art Network found me as a name, and then that became Pan, and then I started realizing that I had some things in common with Pan, the ancient goat god of fields, forests, and flocks, so I started to dress up like Pan, and it was before Matthew Barney did it much better many years later. Thank you. And this is just my address over and over again because I wanted to point out that the performance I'm going to do is called The Address is the Art, which is a phrase that I coined, just meaning that, you know, that's the thing about the air, is that where we live and breathe, that's where the art is, not necessarily what we can hang on the wall or whatever. This was a performance I did in 1980 called Bloch is Here, where I just took my resume and handed it out to people outside art museums all across the country. And it reminds me of, what, I always forget that woman's name. What was her name? Ashley Simpson. She made an album called I Am Me. And I saw that in the subway one day and I thought, what does a 20-year-old have to say to the world except I am me? And then I realized when I was 20, that's what I came up with. Bloch is here. Like I just handed out my resume to people, even though there was hardly anything on my resume. But I wanted everyone to know about it. And is that it? Yeah, that's enough. Thank you. Oh, one more. This is the best of all. This relates to mail art because it's a long story, but some people wanted to meet me because I did mail art with them. I wanted to meet them. We sent each other tons of mail, and then it was like, what should we do? How should we meet? And then eventually we came up with meet. We will have a theme of meet. So we decided to meet at a beach in California on a specific crowded day, and the theme would be meat. So I showed up with an entourage of about 20 people, and we had a cow, which I took a real cow's head, which I'm holding here, and I put it inside that fake paper mache cow's head, and I presented them with it ritualistically, and they opened it up and pulled out the cow head, and everybody freaked out. Meanwhile, they were sitting there waiting for me. There was a time of the Iranian hostages, so they had like their heads blindfolded, and they had meat spread all around them on the sidewalk. One of their fathers owned a butcher shop, so he had like meat all on the sidewalk. And we had this amazing performance art / meeting, which became known as The Meeting. And then we became great friends for many years after that. And I'll just close by saying that that woman, there was a couple, a man and a woman, and just completely by coincidence, but this is true, and they were younger than me, and I was only like 22, and they were like in high school, which I did not know when I met them, but it turns out that's who they were. But they were precocious and wonderful people. And the girl, she literally was a girl, she ended up becoming the mother of Damien Hirst's children. She had 3 kids with Damien over the next like 30 years, but that didn't even start until 20 years after that. So it's just a complete coincidence, but that woman, whose name was Maya, was a lovely, amazing person. And then years later, when I like sort of gave up art and wasn't even interested in doing art, I kind of got a call from Maya one day, and she said, "You should come and meet these people that I know. They're like in the art world." And she starts telling me about mail art. I mean, not about mail art, about, you know, contemporary art and the British artists, you know, what are they called? The YBA artists. And that ended up being Damien Hirst before he was ever heard of. And then I'll just close by saying, I had the pleasure of telling Ray Johnson about that, who took great pleasure in knowing everything in the art world. He knew everything before anyone. He would like sort of just zero in on things. But I had the pleasure of saying, there's an artist on the phone. Ray, there's an artist named Damien Hirst, and I think he's going to be a big deal. You should check him out. So he found out about Damien's art, which was, you know, cows. And also it relates to this cow. That's the amazing thing I'm not saying, is that when Damien saw some video of my performance with the cows, he was like, this is like 40 years before what I was doing with cows, you know, so he thought it was pretty amazing. But the great thing was that Ray took water bugs and plastered a big piece of Scotch tape over it, making a fake Damien Hirst out of some water bugs and some Scotch tape, and said, "Send to Damien Hirst," which is H-E-A-R-S-T, like a hearse. And Ray has his own history with hearses. So it was like, came full circle, and I don't know why I'm telling you any of this, sorry. Is there another question? Go ahead, ask the audience to participate.
My question is for the room. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, hi, thanks, this is great. So I read a little bit about some of your experiments with like electronically mediated, bulletin board, ABS stuff. And I guess my question is, I'm really interested in like radio, like other forms of electronic communication mediated art, but like, kind of ham radio, two-way radio, CD. And I was wondering if you had any encounters with like there's the whole thing with like QSL card exchanges, or like this thing called NTS. I'm interested in just like kind of researching, maybe doing some mail art kind of through this NTS relay system. Like, are there other people out there in that kind of space doing that kind of two-way radio, message relay, beyond just like QSL cards and that kind of thing?
What that brings up for me is, I just have one example in there, but is like the cassette revolution that happened in the late 70s, early 80s, with kids sending cassettes to each other. It was like a punk thing, it was parallel with the zines, and so there's always been an audio component. And it also reminds me of the fact that, I think this is really interesting, I'd love to talk to you about this sometime, is Namjoon Paik who was a father of video art. He was big on pointing out that there's so many books you can buy about video, and so much research you can do about this and that kind of communication, but there's never been hardly any books written about the telephone. And telephones are pretty much in our lives, and there's like hardly any books about it. And in one of my works, I did a little study of the Bell system and how who it was that invented the hashtag and the asterisk sign on on a keyboard. Like, whoever came up with the 12-button system that we used, was pretty ingenious, and we don't know who that was. That's because it was Bell Labs in upstate New York did that. But anyway, I think that what I'm saying is that audio as an art form is very underappreciated, and I don't even know the kind of things that you're talking about, so I would love to know more about that anytime. And maybe there's some parallels, but as far as like off the top of my head, anything to do with mail art and that, I think it was more in the lo-fi cassette exchange category rather than something as sophisticated as what you were saying. And I did, in 1989, I gravitated to online communities, so there was that early cyberspace thing, but I don't know the audio thing you're talking about.
Hey Mark, thanks for this show and for your work, your life work. You've probably been asked this question before, so forgive me. Everything comes around, and of course we're in the digital age, and I'm sure that you've adapted and had to shift your art to the digital age. But do you see sort of a return to old school mail again, or is that really an era that has passed somewhat? I mean, we don't send postcards and letters as a general rule anymore. But do you think there is a resurgence, a retro movement, or something new's on the horizon?
I think you should see my studio, all the envelopes and stamps and postcards I have laying around everywhere, thousands of them, so there's no shortage there. Part of it is because I've been a little bit out of mail art for so long that I don't know who to send them to, and it's much more expensive now than it used to be. It used to be so cheap. That was a great thing about mail art, by the way. It was amazing. I look at the stamps now, and it's like they were nothing. Now it costs 50-something cents just to send one postcard. But to answer your question, it's absolutely popular with young people who want tactile and you know, art that you can smell and touch and receive. And during COVID, there were a few articles about how we should all send art to our next door neighbor and bust out of the electronic age. So I think it's completely, yes, it's an anachronism, but I think it's also an anachronism that we need. And I also think that kids, what I've heard is that there's like, you know, the millennials and then the Gen Z, and now there's like kids that are even less than Gen Z, what do they call them? Gen Y maybe, that they like want that. They don't even wanna know about screens, you know? So I think it's possible that mail art could have a place in the future. I think it should. Like vinyl,
Well,
absolutely.
there's still, I mean, the cheapest real estate is places where you don't have any mail and you don't have electricity, you know, so you have the mail, but you don't have this other stuff, like the internet. So people are still relying on mail.
And where is
There's,
that?
there's a lot of places across the country. Even, look, I did a residency that was induced by Merce Cunningham for Morris Graves in Lolita, California, right below Oregon. This is a place where I had to bring in my own water and all this other stuff. There was really no internet unless you hooked up with someone very rich. So there's a lot of places in America. People are so busy all over the world. You got poverty, you got this, you got that. But there's a lot of places in America that don't have internet.
Are you like consciously not using the microphone because you're anti-technology?
No,
I'm just
I'm
teasing you.
anti-germ, actually.
Ah, that's a good reason.
I'm a germaphobe.
Okay.
But, you know, there are a lot of places that don't have this, and they do rely on
Absolutely.
mail. And the mail is like miles away from their house.
Right, that's right.
That still goes on, and people live a good life.
Yeah, I think that.
Their parties are off the hook, I visited them, I'm telling you.
A lot of countries, you know. did a
I'm talking
leap-
about the United States.
Right,
That's
right.
the thing. Everybody wants to focus on the world. I'm talking about the United States, right below Oregon, Lolita, California.
Yeah, well,
And you got places in Brooklyn where they don't have anything either. I mean, people really need to take care of their own before they start wandering around.
I'm serious about what I said about having a lot of mail stuff in my studio and not knowing where to send it. So if I had some of those addresses, I would like to
Talk
send
to
them
me,
stuff.
there's a price. I could use a good meal too. Talk to me about it.
Okay, give me your address.
Yeah, that was actually gonna be my question, just kind of towards the logistics of how something like that gets set up. And I'm also very interested in it as like a decentralized network. I know you mentioned the military bases and those being a good source to kind of like nodes in a channel. But yeah, I'm just wondering if you have a sense of how something like that might get set up today and connect people who we might not have otherwise access to.
Yeah, I mean, in there I have some examples of mailing lists that we used to send to each other. Because that was the only way that you could do mail art, was if you got a mailing list, then you would know who to send to. I mean, it could just be one person's address, but the lists were like ways to reach lots of people. And now, kids can just go on there's a few, I was talking about arguing with people, and one of the things I argue about is that it's supposed to be decentralized. There was nothing more exciting, you know, in 1979 than getting something in the mail and being amazed by it, and then writing back to the person and waiting for them to write back to me, you know, like, and being surprised by what they had sent me and how something I asked them, or, oh, people used to send these shows with themes, so the theme would be whatever, you know, James Dean or whatever. And so to me, I would think, oh, the most obvious thing to do about James Dean is this, and I would do that. But then when I saw the responses that other people did, and James Dean is a lousy example, something esoteric, but it's fine. What I'm saying is that I was always amazed at what other people came up with. Like, wow. And so that was the decentralized nature of it, is that it was completely not something you Googled, not something where everybody saw the same thing and had the same take. It's like you just got a name in a mailbox and you wrote to that person, and then it was completely decentralized. So I don't know the answer of how you would start now, but certainly could. You have to, I guess, make a rule that you can't cheat. You can't Google it, or I don't know how you go backwards with technology. But Albert Einstein said he didn't know what World War III would be started with, but he knew that World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones. So we might not have to invent anything new. We might get, sorry to get dark, but we might have our own chance to go back to an analog way of doing things in the future. Who knows? And on that cheery note.
Mark, to inject a little more positivity, it strikes me that mail art, especially the way you described it, is very is a mutual relationship in a way that a lot of art that hangs on the wall with a stamp is not, because you're looking forward to hearing what your receiver has to say and give back to you, and the rule, it's a non-rule, is that the viewer gets to decide the meaning. And you're there for their construction of the meaning in a way, because it's like a renga, like a series of haikus where you put the haiku down and the response tells you what the second person thought of the first person's artwork. And I think, am I right in thinking that it's a very generous and receptive medium?
Absolutely. It's just, I mentioned the gift economy. It was, meaning that certain cultures have gifts, and we have gifts in our culture. And it was just, I give something to you and you respond in kind, so it was like a kind of intuitive call and response or something. Yeah, and haiku is a good reference, I think. It was poetic. And we need more of that. Yes?
Where would you get all these others? You guys passing others to each other, there was network of artists that.
Yeah, well, there was two ways to do it. One was one-to-one communication, so I would just hear about you, so I would send you mail. But it might be that you don't do mail art, but I do, so I want to send you something, so I would send weird stuff to my cousins or people I met, or if I wanted to just make an impression on someone, I'd send them a piece of mail. So that was one-on-one, but then there were these shows, and that's why I was saying James Dean, but they have weird concepts whatever, I can't think of it, Liberty, or coffee, or what? World Peace, and everyone would write on that theme, and that's when I would see instead of seeing what I would expect to come back on World Peace, it would be completely different than what I would have ever expected. But that's when you would get a list of the participants in this show and then they would just list them all, and they might be some in the United States. They would always be more dominant in whatever country the exhibition took place in. That would have the most. So if it was in Chile, there'd be mostly Chilean artists, but there'd be a few from New York and a few from other parts of the US and some from Japan and whoever happened to hear from it. It was totally random. That was another exciting thing about it.
That's a great idea. It reminds me of the only generation underneath me that I really admire. That was the ones who did the rig, because that's what me and Basquiat used to do. Keith Haring had these pop-up parties in the middle of nowhere, come with a boombox. The owner would get mad, but then they would come and order burgers for everybody, and then they got rich on that and they loved it. But the next event, I want only mail invites. Didn't get it in the mail. You can't crash it on the internet. You can't whatever, it's got to be the old fashioned mail invite. What a great thing. Thank you for that. That's excellent.
That's why the
The
marketeers.
next event, look for it. Everybody in the event. Everybody here under 20, under 30, look for that email. I mean, see, it's already in the mind, email.
The
Look
marketeers
for the
value
postcard.
word of mouth.
It's gonna
They
be
call
a
it word of
beautiful-
mouth. This really was literally word of mouth, or word of cardboard. You know, it came to you in the mail on a piece of cardboard. I like the way they make postcards now, and they fill the whole thing up both sides. They don't have any place to put an address. It's like, that's not a postcard. You gotta have somewhere to mail it to.
But they should write a letter. People don't know how to write letters anymore. That's
That's
also
true.
a
They don't know
great
where the
thing.
stamp goes.
Yeah.
Any other questions? So I'm gonna,
I think we can probably
please.
kind of continue once we're over there, but we should probably kind of migrate there.
Absolutely. So I want to thank SUDEF. So I'm going to do a performance at the, in between the elevators is where the show begins, and I'm going to do a performance over there in about 5 minutes. And then after that, we can all go back into the reading room. You can look at the show, and I'm going to go back into the reading room, finish the performance, and we can have some refreshments. So thank you all very much.
I remember. They still have, is the archival place still closed? Is that where we're going now? Yeah. No, I haven't seen it since, and it was closed.
Yeah, you gotta check it out.
I died. What kind of crazy?
What's your name?
Debbie.
Oh, sorry.
The German.
I respect it. Honestly, I respect it.
My mom is too. I
But
get it.
no, it's only, no, I've never really been into that. The male handshake, the whole thing, it goes back to so many different people. Why not? That's a great thing. The next great event, probably in the summer. So what it was, all these museums, the NYU and everybody, but Whitney, Matt, all of that, it came in the mail. And they got, I used to do like fundraising. That generation died, they've gone broke, and now they had to get theirs together. So they had nothing to do. Oh my God. It's about whatever they would get from the side.
So you're gonna break
And
this
that's
down?
because they went broke. But back then, they used to do it. And every time they get incredible checks, no one's leaving that kind of money. They're leaving it for you guys.
Yes.
She leaves, you have to go.
Yes, she will.
I'm gonna go,
So you're gonna bring the stuff there, leave it here? What are you gonna
This
do?
was even still on the trade. No more. I think the beginning of Clinton was the end.
Yes, it's everything that led up to the show in the history of the universe. I'm gonna go grab my, I gotta go grab something. I'll be right back.
Your tripod's here. Do you want more or you good with the drink cup? Okay, I'm gonna get more for me.
Yeah, we should probably start.
Tell me when to get them.
Yeah. Artist. I used to do some independent curating. I don't curate as quite as much anymore. For myself, for my art, like multimedia painting, collage, and assemblage, a mix of different things. Yeah.
Are you working on any specific projects?
I've been busy because I work doing art direction too, for like film and photo. And so, yeah.
I think it's less glamorous.
No, I think it's fun. I've worked in fashion mostly in the past, but now I've been doing true curve, which I'm enjoying more. I'm kind of sick of fashion. So, yeah. Well, you know what? For me, I've worked in fashion for a long time. You know, I can never, as creative as I can be, I can never really feel as proud about it because I just don't believe inside of like, and I like fashion a lot. I do. But I don't like fashion as a culture. I don't like the superficial, like, yeah, but also just like behind it, like this kind of superficial, like celebration of like ego celebration and look at me. Like, yeah, but I just mean also just with people's like fetishizing of like, yeah, and themselves and other people based on like, you know, this kind of fantasy.
Yes, as an art director, you're helping to construct.
Yeah, so I could never really get like, it's something that's always like bothered me. So for me, so I love fashion, and I like fashion. I think there's amazing designers and they do incredible, artistic backgrounds. Yeah, in theory, they were doing a lot. But like I said, it exists in contemporary. Yeah, and like this kind of like self-concept in the society. Yeah, so that's why I'm just sick of it. It's just a bunch of bullshit.
Stereotype kind of drives me crazy.
That's
So
what I
when you're like,
mean.
you're behind the scenes,
Yeah. Like, I worked at Bergdorf Goodman for 13 years. Yeah, since I was 20. I'm not like that old.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, I know, I probably don't look that old. But yeah, since I was 20, so I'm 35 now. But yeah, I worked there a long time. But yeah, so I've been around it a lot. Yeah, but it's kind of interesting going into like murder after that.
Right. But it's also about justice. So that's gonna feel like what you're doing is like.
It is some justice.
Putting an emphasis on like.
But it's all interesting. I enjoy doing fashion too. Yeah.
It's just that after a while, things get also so heavy and you realize how where you're like, yeah, all I'm gonna learn.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You get to that point and you're like, okay, I'm gonna put on this.
Yeah, move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But has it given you time to work on your art?
Well, now, sometimes when I'm doing a film, it's like every day I feel like, and it's hard to think about other stuff. But right now, like I just finished something and I'm like back in my studio working on things.
And when you get back to something creative, you realize, because I do film writing on the side, and you get back to it, like, I still got it, and then when you do, you're like, oh, this makes me happy.
Yeah,
I feel like I've
definitely.
got a voice or, something to say, the way I say it, and then it makes me feel like, it's there, I just feel like,
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. Do you work on any artwork yourself or listen to writing? You're a historian.
I love that word.
whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay, but that's
I use the little.
I run into it, like, my specialty, I use like Roman, like, iconography. And so I got into this women's art trade shop, and I was like, you guys know, I don't know how much taste for food, and I have to do reading to catch up. So that was the same for me where I got into
Right.
And then I get to meet
Oh yeah.
interested in people.
I knew back in their house when I was
Like,
there.
Yeah.
well,
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like, and then you realize, like, when Mark was talking about him, the God, like,
Yeah.
antiquity crops up, discussion.
Yeah.
There's only two choices.
Yeah.
So the people have
So I actually did. I did what am I supposed to do?
Ladies and gentlemen, please assemble in front of the timeline.
Wow.
Go further?
All right. Amazing that when you start shouting at people, they shut up and they listen. Let that be a lesson to us as a society. If anyone shouts at you, are you going to listen? I don't know. It's optional. Anyway, I'm grateful that you listened to me. Okay, so I guess we're starting. So I'm Mark. I'm Postman Mark. I had a lot of options. I had a lot of thoughts about what to wear, how elaborate a costume I should wear, and then I just thought, nah. I used to have a friend, and he used to give me his little order forms when I was skinnier and thinner and younger. This used to fit me. He'd give me his order forms from the U.S. Postal System and say, here, just order whatever you want. So I ordered a shirt and I ordered a hat, and these are not regulation shorts, but I wore them because I always got a kick out of the idea of postmen wearing their little shorts. They look so cute. And then I also wore these, purposely wore these black socks. I was wondering if I could take a poll of all of you. What do you guys think is like nerdier? You think it's nerdier to have like the low socks? Like I couldn't find any socks that came up to my knees. So I wore these, and in a way I thought they were better because they're nerdier. I was wondering, I'm gonna take a few opinion polls tonight. So first opinion poll is, can I get a consensus on about, first of all, I know it's very nerdy for me to have this too tight shirt buttoned up like this, so that I'm not gonna ask you about. But I'd like to know, I'd like to get a show of hands, how many people think it's nerdier to have the low socks rather than the knee socks? And they do have to be black socks with tennis shoes and shorts. Is this nerdier than having them up to here? How many people say the low ones? No. Okay. How many people would have preferred that they come all the way up towards the knee? Total nerd. Okay. Okay. So thank you for that. Not scientific. Okay, so this is my timeline. This has nothing to do with the, well, it has everything to do with the show. And I thought I would bring you all here. Please gather around. I thought I would bring you here to look at this timeline that I created a few days before this show opened. If you look at the this area right here, this is when the show opened. That was September 17th. Okay. And I made this work of art maybe around right here, like 3 or 4 days before the show, when I was very neurotic and very nervous and full of anxiety about the show. So these pictures of me with tons of cigarettes sticking in my mouth are like representative of my inner turmoil, my confusion, my angst, my inner anger, anger outward, anger inward. What else do we have? This is sort of the idea of making errors is okay, that we accept our errors. So even though I have this inner angst and this inner anger, it's okay to make art about it, because then it sort of turns it into something else that maybe it's not so bad. So that's an idea, but that just popped out of me. Everything here just popped out of me 4 or 5 days before the show. Here's where I started mail art in 1977. We could put that here. And here's where I was born, in Würzburg, Germany. I'm so glad that SupDev asked me about the military base. And here is what I call well, you call it postmodern, I call it panmodern, because we don't really know what postmodern is. It's very vague. If you ask people, they'll always give you a different answer. But for me, panmodern starts around the time that I was born. This is me and Ray Johnson, the guy who started mail art. I think that he was maybe one of the first pan-modern artists, meaning things started to break up around the time that him and other people started to make process-oriented art instead of object-oriented art. So maybe in the 1950s, 1960s, this is where we have the beginning of pan-modern. But if you look at these epochs, these big ones, you have here modern, which is maybe around 1900 or 1880. There's Miss Juliet Man Ray's wife. She's in the modern era. And this, again, is not scientific, so some of these big things are in the wrong place. But this is sort of the modern era, 20th century. And here you have the pre-modern era, including the invention of drumming. I had my slide of the different communication art forms. So this is where we have drumming and smoke signals being invented as the first communication art forms. This is where, not sure the exact date of this, but this is where huge egos become a thing. Before that, it really wasn't a thing. It was just, you'd sometimes have some problematic people. In fact, I have a flesh-colored magic marker. I'm going to use the flesh-colored magic marker for that because it's very fleshy. Huge egos becoming a thing is a very human thing. It's very
something human beings would do, have a huge ego and worry. I mean, all this stuff with the cigarette smoking and me and my little personal problems, that's very human too. I hate to admit it, but that's just me being a person. And then, let's see, you got the invention of drumming. Here's like a complete essay on structuralism and post-structuralism and a lot of stuff that you don't want to know about because it's multi-syllabic. So please avoid this at all costs, but I wanted to include it in case there were any critics here, anyone who was theoretical. I wanted to let you feel like you were important to me, so I put this in here. But this is really important. This is the Department of Education era and area. This goes back to Project 2025 when one of the candidates for president said that they were going to eliminate the Department of Education. So I just wanted to memorialize that. And this was 4 or 5 days before the show opened in September. So I actually wanted to do that before the election. I somehow had a premonition. I didn't know who was going to win or anything. That's not why I did it. I just had a premonition that memorializing the idea that the Department of Education exists would be a good thing. And now I'm convinced that was a good thing to remember, that there used to be a Department of Education in the United States, and I notated that here. We still have one, by the way. It might survive. Let's see, what else? This is what happens after you die. I can't even remember why I put that here. This is what happens in Fluxus and all the things leading up to Fluxus. This is me impersonating Ray Johnson's book about death. He made this thing in 1963 called The Book About Death, and I took the book about death and I made a suit so that I am the book about death. So here's what happens after you die. Here's the different communication symbols. All of a sudden, we're back around 10 million BC suddenly. I'm getting a nosebleed. 10 billion BC. I'm getting my big toe is burning. This is the Big Bang era. Explosion happens here. And finally, this is God. He invented the Big Bang. And then here's the era before God. So that's here. And this is before you were born. I guess the idea of the after you die is there's the before you were born and then the after you die. Like this is the mystery area here. We're not sure. We're here. We know what's going on here, but we don't know what's going on here, and we don't know what's going on here. And finally, this is another thing about theory and art history and structuralism. It's about 50 or 60 or 100 words that mean something being a replacement for something else, like a proxy, or a symbol, or a sign, or a pictograph, or a twin, or a duplicate, or a counterpart, or a identity, or a stand-in, or a double, or a doppelganger, or a ideogram, or a cipher, something like that. And there's many other things, but finally, I wanted to just ask another opinion poll. I invented this thing called pantagonism. This performance was going to be called Pantagonism. It was about what I was saying about all the angst, all the me and the cigarettes and the worry and the anxiety about my show. I was wondering if you guys could tell me some reasons why you have, well, the theory was that I am being antagonistic because I'm a pain in the ass and I'm upset and I'm difficult and I'm bored and I'm angry and argumentative and my anxiety is turning into an offensive thing to others. So I wondered if you guys had any things like that in your lives, if you could just shout out a few things that you might feel like have been bothering you lately. I think even now we're in a particularly tough time, so I want...
Trump might try to privatize the post office. That's what currently irking me.
Really?
About.
Okay, so I'll put that up here. Now I was noticing that prioritize.
Privatize.
Privatizing.
Because he's so rich, he could pay $10 instead of 73 cents a stamp, I guess if he ever wrote anything.
I was thinking about how we still have that DeJoy guy in charge of the post office. It was like the end of the first Trump era, we had this DeJoy guy was the postmaster general, and we went through all the Biden years, couldn't get rid of him, and now we have a new era, and DeJoy is still the postmaster general. For all we know, the whole election was rigged by the postal system, but I would never start a conspiracy theory like that. But anyway, privatizing the postal system, okay. Anyone else have something that's really?
Yeah, no electric vehicles. He decided to buy the whole fleet gas propelled.
Non-electric vehicles. So you're against non-electric vehicles or you're for it?
This guy refused to buy electric vehicles.
It doesn't have to all be political. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but I'm just saying.
This is what
Like for me, it has to do with my mom.
Freud.
But anyway, anyone else have anything that's bothering them?
Dealing with the healthcare system.
What?
Dealing with
The healthcare system, okay.
Oh, it can't be political?
Oh, no, it
That's
can
not
be.
political.
Look, I noticed I wrote with the flesh-colored pen here. You can barely read
Renegade
it.
is gone.
But it is health.
Yeah.
Okay, we have three more left. Who has who's feeling something a little troubling that they want to share with the group?
Sexy.
Sexy?
That is troubling.
What?
Troubling with those.
No,
Sexy.
no sex.
No sexy.
No, rule of law.
What?
Rule of law.
I'm sorry?
Rule of law.
Yeah.
Oh, the rule of law.
It's disappearing in this city.
Okay, how
in this
about
country.
one could be the rule of law,
And that's very.
and then the other one could be the rule of sex.
Sex rule.
No. It's serious. The rule of law is what used to be what America is about. It's now it's going out.
I agree with that. But don't you think that some of that could have to do with the rule of sex, sort of a misplaced sexual energy that's coming up in all the wrong places, possibly? Because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about pantagonism being like a kind of problematic, misplaced anger kind of thing.
Left is right, right is left.
Uh-huh. How would you say that in one phrase?
You cannot.
What?
Antagonism.
Oh, I see. So this is, the whole thing is that. Anybody want to take a shot at one last reason that we're all?
Trumpism.
AI relationships.
AI relationship. I would propose AI in general. I think,
Sure, yeah.
I
was
think
thinking
AI is,
specifically getting
I
engaged.
think
in
AI
ChatGPT.
sucks. I was thinking that between climate change, AI, and then there was one other thing. It's like there's these three things. I can't remember what the third one was, but there are three things that are being hoisted upon us. And
Nuclear.
Nuclear, that is nuclear. Like that happened in the 50s, and we actually dealt with that fairly responsibly. But now, with climate change and AI, they are not. We're not hiding under our desks doing drills like we did with the nukes, so we need some kind of drill. Anyway, excuse me, I have to grab something here. You've all done a great job.
Oh. Look like there's something.
Now, to conclude things, first of all, the person who said the thing about the privatization of the post office. FedEx, notice FedEx. What happened to the mail? FedEx happened to the mail. That's one thing that happened. So, look what I have in my FedEx package. It's 1/3 of my piece of art from 1997 called Superpower Mailbags. So this is the number one offender. And we have number 2, this is a big one, also in a FedEx package. Number 2. Again, superpower mailbags. This country doesn't even exist anymore. The URRS.
And finally, remember that one back then? Yeah.
Oh, he changed.
Yeah,
Finally,
Soviet.
if you feel like it, you can all chant USA, USA, USA. I'm joking. Chanting is optional. Okay. So now, performance is almost over. What we're gonna do, I wanted to show you all something, by the way. I brought this copy of the Brooklyn Rail because I'm on the cover. Not me, but, well, here's a little picture of me. I'm in one of these kids. But another guy from Switzerland did this because they wanted to cover my show. But when did this come out? March of 2020, which is when COVID hit. So this show was supposed to happen March of 2020. It was on the cover of a magazine. No show. It never happened. So I just wanted to point out that that's right here on this timeline. It goes right here. But it's a great issue, and there's a nice story about me in here. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, finally, ladies and germs, thank you for indulging me. All my long-winded responses in there, and all my, let's see, thank you for indulging me, all my long-winded responses in there, and thank you for indulging me now, my long-winded performance. So I would like to invite you all to participate in my performance, okay? So, sorry, I didn't anticipate having to open up these bags. Okay, you want to do some? Yeah, open them up and pass them around. These are balloons. I would like everyone to take your God-given breath and breathe into one of these balloons, tie it in a knot, and give it back to me. Please. Okay.
It's a little difficult. The one is not here.
Anybody need one?
Oh, yeah.
Right here. Everybody got a balloon?
I could probably do it. You want help? They're probably there.
Hey, you made it, man.
I made it. Yeah, I made it.
Oh, thank you for coming. You enjoy it? I'm a frustrated comedian, but this is my son, and he's a real comedian. All right. Did you blow up a balloon, though, Jamie? Please leave your breath behind.
You want us to tie them, right?
I want you to tie them. I want you to blow these up, and then tie them. Here's how you do. You go like this. Okay. Everybody got a balloon? Okay. And then, as your official postman, I am going to now deliver the mail. I have these postcards, which are souvenirs. They're worth a lot of money. And anyone who puts a balloon in one of these mail bags will receive one postcard. So please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's good. Oh, I'm sorry. It's only fair that okay, that's enough. Hold on.
What you doing now?
Oh, wait, maybe you better hold that.
In the bag and getting a postcard.
See, what was going to happen was I was going to come in here filled with papers, postcards, boxes,
Taking a postcard.
and I was going to fill up these mail bags with contraband. And then I decided I want to do a fake version. I don't want it to be all heavy. I want it to be, and I told a friend of mine, I said it's going to be like it's going to be a fake heavy bag of mail. There you go. And then where's the other one? Oh, and then my friend surprised me by saying that, oh, I don't think you should do a fake mail bag. I think you should really bring all the paper and clutter and envelopes and postcards from your studio down from Beacon on the train. And anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Please.
Thank you.
And so she surprised me by saying that because I was like, no, I'm going to pretend I have a big heavy mail bag. But then I thought, why don't I fill it up with balloons? And furthermore, why don't I fill it up with the breath of my coworkers, and I could bring it all here, and our breath, our DNA and our breath could be one. So, you know what? There's a lot of other parts to this performance, but I think I'm not going to do them unless you want to ask me about them privately. So, thank you. And we still have room in here, by the way. Yes?
Do you have anything commemorating Newman?
What?
Do you have anything commemorating Newman from Seinfeld, that poor guy?
Newman, yes. Newman says, what is it? Newman has a great quote.
The mail never
The
stops.
Postal Service, Jerry. It's information.
I like these.
But then he also says, I don't know. There used to be that phrase, mail moves the country and zip code moves the mail.
What's the deal with those green, huge mailboxes? They call it the green ones. Sometimes they open, you know? They leave them open.
The green ones?
The green ones, sometimes you find that the door open, maybe somebody else open.
We have put this here, Mark.
Okay, I'll find the door. I mean, yeah. Hey, thank you for coming. Is that okay?
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. I know what I wanted to say. I wanted to say something funny. Are you still running, Sam?
Yeah.
One last thing. I have a funny remark. We'll close with this. I measured the mail bag. I wanted to see like in the Trump. I wanted to see like in the Trump era, like who had the best, biggest mail bags. So the USA's mail bags are 33 by 23. The Russian mail bags are 35 by 26. So they're a little bit, the Russian mail bags are a little bigger than the US mail bags. And finally, the biggest mail bags are China, 40 by 28. And here's the funny closing remark. The United States has more girth. We have an 11-inch thick mailbag. The Chinese have no girth whatsoever, and the Russians have 6 inches of girth. So we might have one of the smallest mailbags, but we have the most girth.
All right.
Thank you, folks. Don't forget to tip your waitress.